Hello, welcome to A Web of Stories. My name is Melinda and I am here with my weekly wrap up. So this is going to go out on the 21st of September. I'm doing this on the 20th of September. I don't know, I kind of like it when I know like when people are filming versus when we see it, because I know a lot of my videos I kind of do way in advance, or not way in advance, but in advance so I can just pop them in, but whatever. I don't know if you care, but there's the information if you care or not. Anyway, how has your week been? Mine has been good. First of all, thank you so much, all of you who left well wishes for our wedding anniversary. It was number 17. We had a nice, quiet anniversary this week. So tomorrow, as you see this, will be my birthday, because we have, in our family, we have our anniversary, and then the week after that's my birthday, and then 2 weeks after that's my son's birthday. That all just lined up perfectly. So yeah, it'll probably be another quiet birthday, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine. I don't care. As long as I don't have to cook. That's it. I know my kids would very much like me to get an ice cream cake for my birthday, but I am not going to do that. I will get that for their birthday. My birthday, we do not need an ice cream cake. Maybe we will go somewhere where we can get dessert. That'll be good enough. Anyway, outside of that, let's see. Interesting thing that happened this week was on Wednesday night, my daughter had her back to school night. So she is a sophomore in high school. And last year I didn't know about this. I don't know how I missed it. And this year I didn't know about it until like the day of, and her Spanish teacher sent out an email telling everyone about it. And even then I got the time wrong, so we missed the first half hour. But anyway, this was our chance to kind of go to all of her classes and meet all her teachers. We did skip PE and health because I don't care. And we wanted to go to social studies, but we didn't for reasons that I'll get to. But in many ways, it was kind of my daughter's worst nightmare because my husband came too. So first class was psychology, which was fine. Second class, I can't remember all the classes, but at one point we get to chemistry. And my husband just starts, but my husband is an engineer. He's a science guy. So it's like, blah, blah. And he just kept going. And my daughter's like, can we please leave? Can we please leave? And then we hit ELA. English language arts. It was just English when I was a kid. I don't know when the switch from English to ELA happened, but there you go. I noticed that there's a lot of new terminology in education now. My kids always talk about formatives and summatives. That's not a thing that we did when I was a kid. We got like assignments and tests. That's what we had. But anyway, let me tell you about her ELA class. It's a new curriculum they're doing, and from what the teacher described, it sounds like a really good curriculum. And I could look at the syllabus. There's an emphasis on independent reading and thinking about how you read, and I am all for that. So my daughter, she gave me a little card to tell me something about my daughter, and so I said, you know, she's very self-motivated, and she is, and she's, you know, very, you know, she takes education pretty seriously, and since first grade, she's been writing stories. So she loves to write stories. I remember in first grade, she would write these horror novels where it would be like you get chased by vampires, and then zombies come, and then werewolf comes, and then aliens come, but then Spider-Man comes and saves the day. That was the usual plot. And I said, you are just like one step away from being Stephen King at this point. So she took creative writing both years in high school. And I know that she works on stories. I get to see some of them, but I don't push her on it. But she used to be a really big reader. And what happened is one year in school, she was at a private school where they taught, if you were advanced, if you were above average or below average, it was not a good school for you because they just didn't meet your needs. So she spent all of that year just reading books, and she just got sick of it, and it breaks my heart. But so I'm glad to know that there's, you know, a big emphasis on reading in that class. And I do know that right now for her independent reading, she's reading the third Amari book, which is Amari and the Knight Brothers, the first, you know, I can't remember what the actual title of the series is. I just call it the Amari books by B.B. Alston. They're really great. If you haven't read them, I do recommend them. They're, as I say, they're like great, kind of like wizard books with a much less problematic author and lots of black girl magic. So there you go. So she's reading those. But then like I started talking to the teacher, and I could see her just kind of like try to melt into the wall. Like, Mom, shut up, shut up, shut up. At one point towards the end of the year, I don't know exactly how this works. I don't know if they're going to get to choose one of these 4 books to read or they're assigned. I said, if you choose, so the 4 books are Fahrenheit 451, which I have not read, but I recognize it's a classic. Animal Farm by George Orwell, which I read in middle school. And I always think is kind of a strange book for an English class because I think it's more valuable to teach in terms of like economics. But, you know, whatever. It's still a worthwhile book. Something by Ayn Rand and Kindred. So I said, if you get there and you get a choice, do not get the Ayn Rand, but get Kindred. And then I came home and I said, I have the book. You can read it now if you want. And she's like, shut up, Mom. Just no. Okay. In fact, so I finally got out of that. And then we ended up in math class. And my husband started going again, and my daughter's like, oh, please stop. But anyway, between me getting involved with the English teacher and the whole, like, what's going on in English, and my husband getting involved with, like, what's happening in chemistry and math, we ran out of time, so we didn't go to her U.S. history class because we just ran out of time, which was probably wonderful because that would have been, like, when my husband and I, when we combined our powers and went in and just totally embarrassed my daughter. But anyway. I'm actually really impressed with her teachers this year. One of the reasons why I really wanted to make a point of going this year is that last year she mostly had really good teachers, but she did have one that there were some issues with that I wish I had known about it. I had like made that connection earlier with her. So, but I am glad. I don't think there's going to be any problem this year. I think that she's going to do really well. So that was good. What else? I might have a little bit of an announcement next week, but we'll see. I'm going to save that. Anyway, so let me get into what I am reading. I did finish 3 books or what I read, I should say. You can see what I'm reading by going down below. Sorry, there is a truck. Okay, they're not pulling into our driveway. You can see what I'm currently reading by going down below. But this is what I finished this week, and I finished 3 books. And I want to talk a little bit about 2 of them I talked about in my mid-month book bash vlog, but I want to talk more about them. So the first one is The September House by Carissa Orlando. So in that, I talked about, I enjoyed it, but I just don't think it's going to be a book that stuck with me. And a lot of people said, oh, that's too bad. I really like this book. And I'm like, okay, what was really going on with me with this book? And I've realized that there were 2 things that kind of maybe dampened this book a bit for me. One is a few months ago, I read Diavola by Jennifer Marie Thorne. And honestly, that's just a better haunted house book. It is. If you like September House, go read Diavola. You'll like it. I just thought that was a much better haunted house book than September House. So I think if I hadn't read Diavola, or if I had read Diavola longer ago, which I don't think I could have because I think it was a new release, but you know what I mean. There had been more time between the 2. Maybe September House would have not suffered from comparison between the 2. And the other thing is, well, I'll get to that in a second. The other thing is, I don't know. I had a little trouble at the beginning kind of deciding figuring out what kind of book this really was. Cause it was almost like, is this supposed to be like dark comedy? What's going on here? So that kind of like, where am I with this at the beginning kind of set me up a little bit in probably not the best way for this book. That might just be a me issue. I did enjoy it. I do want to put out there. I'm not saying it's a bad book. I enjoyed it. I'm just saying it's not going to be one like Diavola. I am not going to forget. September House. If you saw my vlog, I already forgot about it. It's just one of those things. The second reason, which I just alluded to, was at the same time I was listening to this other book. And both this book, which is a memoir, and September House had some issues that were in common. And I think the strength of those issues, like it was so visceral in this other book, which I will talk about in a sec, versus sort of the fictionalization in September House, which it was fine. It didn't pair well. They didn't go well together because of that. And that second book was one I listened to, and it's called A Well-Trained Wife, My Escape from Christian Patriarchy by Tia Levings. So before I get into this book, I do want to urge you to go follow Tia Levings on Instagram. She's Tia Levings author. You can definitely follow her for her book and her writing, whatever. But the reason why I say you should follow her is that she gives you really good insights into the sort of mindset of like Christian nationalism and kind of what they're thinking, and explains why they do the things they do in terms of politics. And I've learned quite a lot from her, and I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. That's really interesting. And I think clearly in this country, in the United States, there are some very different ways of looking at the world. And I think understanding people, you don't even have to agree with them. You don't even have to completely understanding them, but recognizing some of the differences, and maybe that's why they think the way they do, I think would help our country if we did that. You don't have to agree with them. You could think they're completely wrong. And I do think a lot of what's going on in Christian nationalism is I think Christian nationalism is very, very wrong. Don't get me wrong on that. But seeing some of the comments that she made in her Instagram reels about what's going on there makes things make a bit more sense on the why they do the things they do. So I would recommend following that. Anyway, back to this book. So Tia Levings was raised in Southern Baptist, and then she married this guy, and from the beginning, the marriage was not good. And they, because of him, kind of made the decision to keep going to more and more fundamentalist versions of already fundamentalist Christianity. And sort of the darkness that came with that. So my overall feelings with the book is I liked this book. I kind of wish I hadn't listened to it, only because she doesn't have the most, sadly, she reads her own book. And I wish someone else had read the book. Let's just put it that way. And it's not that she did a bad job. It's more just like the timbre of her voice sort of thing. And I really had trouble at the beginning. And then at my book club last week, someone said, just try speeding it up a little bit. And I did. And that did help. So I was able to get through it. But, there's a lot of things that are really terrifying about this book. So I have nothing in my life that would cause me to be triggered by domestic abuse or religious abuse. Like, I've not experienced, thankfully, knock on wood, experienced that in my life. So it's not like I have any connection to that. I have seen the effects of religious abuse. I went to school at William & Mary, and there's a very large fundamentalist contingent there, and I would see things with some of my classmates. I'd be like, ooh boy. But anyway, I've seen it kind of secondhand and from the outside, but there's nothing in there that would be an emotional, personal issue for me. I still had trouble reading some of the stuff that was in here because it was so bad. It starts out, we get a little bit at the beginning, which we have to have, of her kind of setting the scene. Like, this is where I started from. I didn't feel that was effectively written. I felt a little bit like she was treading water, and that might have been why I was having trouble just in general with the book, because I'm like, okay, come on, something's got to happen. But then when she gets into it, then you cannot put it down. Like, I was like, I need to go listen to this book. I need to know what happens. And then the title of the book is My Escape from Christian Patriarchy. Okay, so I'm not spoiling anything. She escapes from it. And we go through a lot of her healing process, which is necessary and interesting. But even there were also some treading water moments. I was like, maybe some rewriting should have been done there to kind of keep it going. So it wasn't, as far as writing goes, a perfect book for me, but it was definitely an eye-opener. The one thing that I had not considered, that this book really made me consider. So she marries this guy. It's kind of like, this is what she was supposed to do. That's how she was raised to do. This is what she's supposed to do. And this guy clearly has dealing with some mental health issues. And I'm not trying to escape what happens in Christian nationalism, Christian patriarchy. That's all bad. I also think that it is very attractive to men who have some certain mental health issues. And I think that is what happened to her, which made it doubly horrifying. So yes, it's definitely, I recommend it. Not a 100% perfect book, but I do recommend it. And I do think it's really an eye-opener, especially to kind of understand why some people do the things they do in our political environment right now. But it's pretty terrifying. So yeah, so that was an audiobook that I listened to. And then I finished this month's Agatha Christie book, N or M. I listened to my mid-month book bash vlog, and I'm going N or M, N or M, N or M. So this is a Tommy and Tuppence novel. So Agatha Christie has these various detectives and detective teams. And Tommy and Tuppence are unique in that, one, they aren't really mystery detectives, they're thriller detectives. So their books are different, books and stories have a different feel to them. two. They're the only ones that Agatha Christie wrote who age. So they're always sort of contemporary with whatever Agatha Christie was at the time. The first book is A Secret Adversary, which was the second book she wrote, and they're like in the early 20s, right after, they're in their early 20s, and it is the early 20s, after World War I, and that's very much where Agatha Christie was in her life. And then we have Partners in Crime, which is short stories. And then we have this one, which I thought came out in 1940. It was written in 1940. It came out in 1941. And they're about the age, they're in the same point in life where Agatha Christie would have been. They have children, but their children are young adults. And they're kind of like, what are we going to do? We're middle-aged now. What are we going to do? And so that's where we are with this book. This is also, as I mentioned, if you didn't see my mid-month book bash, there's two really interesting things about this book. One is it is written contemporaneously. So this is really a true time capsule book. Contemporaneously with what's going on in the war. So what England was doing in World War II during 1940, basically. And we see things like the fall of France. Sorry, my husband's over there. Fall of France and all these things. This is the only book, I believe, where Agatha Christie sort of overtly talks about World War II, as she was writing it during World War II. Agatha Christie, during that war, her home had been requisitioned by the military. She went to London to work in a hospital. Her husband joined the military. She, for her own sanity, just was very prolific with her writing and just was writing constantly, to the point that she would not go down into bomb shelters. When there was an air raid, she would just put a pillow over her head, because like, if you're gonna die, you're gonna die. That was sort of her feeling about this. This was also the time where she wrote the last Hercule Poirot book, which is Curtain, and the last Miss Marple book, which I think was Nemesis, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. Those were written during World War II. So, and they were, put in a lockbox. One was not to be released until after her death. And they weren't released till after her death. She just lived until the 70s. The proceeds to one was to support her daughter, and the proceeds from the other was to support her husband in case something happened to her. That's kind of important to note as we get to the end of her writing, because Agatha Christie's writing is very much like this, but then those last two books kind of pop right back up again. From what I understand, I haven't read them yet. So that's one thing that's interesting about this book. The other thing is there's a character in this book called Major Bletchley. And no, I'm not going to say much more, because it's not, I'm not going to say anything more about the character than his name, because that's really all that's important. And I did tell this story in my mid-month book flash. This book comes out in 1941, and all of a sudden Agatha Christie finds herself in hot water, because this is a popular book. Agatha Christie is a well-established author at this time. She's very popular, and she has this character named Major Bletchley. And the United Kingdom has this thing called Bletchley Park, which is supposed to be top secret. So is she sending signals to someone? Anyway, it was all a coincidence, but that's just kind of a fun story. Back to this book. I'm iffy on Tommy and Tuppence, I will be honest, but I liked this book more than I thought I would. Tommy and Tuppence have calmed down a bit. I think because they're middle-aged now. They're still plucky. They still have these things going on. In fact, the setting of this book is Tommy and Tuppence are living their life, wishing they could do more for the war effort. And this man comes and he offers basically a job to Tommy to go undercover and do something, but not to Tuppence. And there's this whole subterfuge where Tuppence finds out what's going on. So when Tommy gets to where he needs to be for this undercover job, Tuppence is already there undercover on her own. So that's sort of the start of it. So it's kind of fun. It's toned down, which I really appreciate. I will say, I don't want to say it was predictable so much as they need to find out who N and M are. N and M are like spies. They're playing for the other side. And they need to find out who these two people are among this group of people. And I will say it was pretty obvious who they were. In one case, I can't remember, I think it was M, doesn't matter. It was sort of like, come on, you should have picked this up by now, come on. And whatever, but it was still fun. There was some kind of cute little Tommy and Tuppence stuff, but it was definitely toned down more. Tommy and Tuppence still probably not my favorite of Agatha Christie's detectives, but I do feel better about them now than I did in earlier works. So yeah, I would recommend this one, just for sort of what's important about this book is it being her World War II book, you know, these sorts of things. And I love time capsule books, you know, and so I think time capsule books are really important, and this is her real true time capsule book. So I don't highly recommend it. I recommend it. I will say, if you just kind of go and pick this up, you're probably not going to want to go back and read earlier Tommy and Tuppence. I think that would be a really hard kind of shock to read this and then go read Secret Adversary. So I would say if you want to have a more holistic kind of view of Tommy and Tuppence, start with Secret Adversary. You don't necessarily need to read Partners in Crime, which is a short story collection. But if you just start with NRM, then you're going to want to skip Secret Adversary and Partners in Crime and just kind of go on from there. There are 2 other Tommy and Tuppence books coming up. There's By the Pricking of My Thumbs, which I don't know anything about, and Postern of Fate, which I've heard is terrible. But I will read it because I am going to be a completist. I am reading her to 0. So there you go. That was my reading week. As I said a couple times in my vlog, feeling a little stressed this month with how much reading. I'm feeling less stressed now. I think I'm a little bit more, you know, a little bit on more stable ground now. I still need to do 12th Night. I can't believe I've gone this far into the month and not done my Shakespeare. So this weekend I'm gonna read 12th Night. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get an adaptation in, but that's okay because I will be seeing a stage production of it in December. So I vow to you that there will be a Wednesday with Will next week, and I will talk about 12th Night. There, I've put it out, so now I have to do it. Anyway, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, tell me what you've been reading this week, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.